in past videos and rants, I've exposed the ideology of the far left. I've exposed the ideology that is totalitarianism, and I have exposed how it connects with most theocracies. Of course, a totalitarianistic society like North Korea has a state religion where they worship their leader as if he literally created everything. But countries like Iran are also in a similar situation, except they use an organized religion such as Islam. Of course, it's easy for people like us to find the atrocities that the Islamists have done, not only in their own countries, but ours. But it's also important to note that some Jews, Christians, and people of other religions also support the more communistic ideology. What I'm about to read is from a blog by a Christian who I believe is on the far left. But I'm going to actually expose to you what some of them believe in before going into detail about theocracies, specifically Jewish and Christian ones. To be a Christian is to fight for the poor, not to fight for justice. Therefore, it is impossible to be a Christian and not to be a true communist, though the converse is not true. Christianity is fundamentally incompatible with anti-communism, since communism is primarily a social legacy of the Christian path to truth. More to the point in these days of hope and change, something Obama wants, something Al Sharpton wants, Christianity is fundamentally incompatible with neoliberalism, the far right, and no real change is possible unless capitalism is forcibly renounced. This is just the beginning of a blog that they are writing. I'm not going to actually read the whole thing. I don't have time for this. But knowing what I know about those who oppose individuality, many Russian Orthodox people that I know are very socialistic. They treat their communist past in Russia as if it was nostalgia. And they don't really value the American system. It doesn't mean they're all like that. Many of them are not vehemently anti-American. Many of them don't hate freedom. But a decent number do. And to them, they believe that their Orthodox Christian idea mixes with the ideology of communism. And this makes sense. In the Dark Ages, the Catholics imposed a more collective system where people weren't really making a profit. And the only people who would have money would be the Catholic Church. And in such societies, this idea of gaining wealth didn't exist. Everything was publicly shared, and nobody had any individual freedom. The Renaissance system is actually, in some cases, the forefather of the American system, where freedom and individuality and talent are recognized. And the idea of making money and making a profit is something these people accept. The far left ideology feeds off of the individual, but does not grant the individual freedom. That is the hypocrisy of their ideology. It feeds off of our money. They feed off of it. It is also note that many ultra-Orthodox Jews who hate America and Israel are also very socialistic. Of course, they don't recognize Jesus as their most important figure. He is a Christian figure, but the idea is the same. They hate the individual. They don't value productivity. So of course they're going to be welfare recipients, and they will value the other side. They will value the far left side. And Jews who do this are not benefiting the community, just as anybody else. Some people in India that were Hindu were also on the far left at one point. They valued those ideologies, which clearly don't work. And people who do are making their societies worse. And people who oppose this corrupt system are making their society better. So of course the most prosperous societies are going to be more secular, because the organized religions that exist were for poor-hearted people. Now, I'm not against people believing in what they want to believe in. They have the right to be Jewish, Christian, Muslim, Hindu, Sikh, Buddhist, Taoist, or Shinto, or whatever people are into. If I didn't mention your religion, sorry, I don't have time to get to all of them. But the idea that it should be more important than the individual is common. It does not mean that they all do. Not all Buddhists actually support the useless movement of hippies. Not all Hindus support the socialistic far-left ideology. Some are very pro-American, far-right. Even some Sikhs are. But it is true that the movement, and any religious movement, can carry a far-left just as much as it can carry a far-right. And I think people should wake up and realize that any religion can become similar to Islam in its context of politics and in the political context of individuality. I do believe that when America decided to be less Catholic, when they didn't want to invite Spaniards, they actually set themselves up in a good direction, because the Catholics were the ones who didn't value freedom or individuality at that time. So, of course, it made sense for America to have every other religion that they could accept at the time. Just not that one. So, the Constitution itself, even though some of the people who made it were not super atheists, they did not value the Catholic mentality that took place in the Dark Ages. And interestingly enough, the hippies who value the collective are valuing the system of the Dark Ages. The Renaissance is the opposite of the Dark Ages. And the more secular people who value libertarian economics will acknowledge that the individual was not less important in the Renaissance, as it was in the medieval times. In the medieval times, there was no such thing as liberty. And bringing America to the Dark Ages is the worst thing that could ever happen. And as real Americans, I challenge you to read about American history, and I challenge you to value your liberties and to tell others why America is great.